Welcome to this explainer. Today, we are cracking the code on the fascinating, visually rich cinematic language of Indian director Kumar Shahani. If you love art that actually challenges you, cinema that speaks an entirely different language and demands you look way beyond the surface, well, you are in exactly the right place. We aren't just looking at movies today, we're going to learn how to read a hidden visual code. You see, Kumar Shahani didn't just bend the rules of cinema, he completely threw the traditional Bollywood rulebook right out the window. As a true rebellious pioneer of the Indian parallel cinema movement, he really wasn't interested in simple entertainment. Instead, he wanted to craft a profound, challenging visual experience that came to be known as his epic idiom. So, here's how we're going to break down his unique style today. First, who was Kumar Shahani? Second, formalism, the third meaning. Third, splitting image and sound. Fourth, Indian arts as cinematic form. And finally, number 5, the epic legacy.
All right, let's jump right into Section 1. Who exactly was Kumar Shahani?
Born in Sindh in 1940, Shahani's family was abruptly uprooted by the 1947 partition, which forced them to shift to Bombay. Now, this early, profound displacement fostered a radical openness within him to multiple aesthetic traditions. Living perpetually between cultures and languages created this sense of double alienation for him. But, and this is absolutely crucial, rather than hindering him, it actually became the very foundation of his artistic voice. It pushed him to embrace all possible cinematic languages, a perspective he really sharpened while studying under the legendary Ritwik Ghatak at the Film and Television Institute of India.
To really get Shahani, we kind of have to look at what he was rebelling against. While mainstream commercial Bollywood absolutely thrives on psychological realism, predictable linear plots, and massive song and dance spectacles, Shahani took a completely different path. His cinema leans heavily into that epic idiom we mentioned, defined by abstract formalism and a rigorous classical structure. He wasn't trying to make a conventional popcorn movie. He wanted to mine the depths of history, class, and cinematic form itself.
Which brings us to Section 2, formalism and the concept of the third meaning.
Okay, so at the very heart of his work is this concept called formalism. What does it actually mean for us as viewers? Well, in this approach, the deliberate structural arrangement of the image and the sound is the primary bearer of meaning. Shahani developed a cinematic idiom where he intentionally divorces the sound from the image and really carefully juxtaposes visuals. His goal isn't just to show you a literal story from point A to B. Instead, he constructs this abstract space where new thoughts and oblique meanings are literally born directly in your own mind as you watch.
He was actually deeply inspired by the montage theories of the famous Russian director Sergei Eisenstein. The mechanics here are simple but incredibly powerful. Combining two distinct, concrete images, let's call them image A and image B, forces your brain to bridge the gap and create idea C. This is a brand new third meaning that is never explicitly shown on the screen. But, Shahani didn't just copy Eisenstein. He absorbed this theory and applied it seamlessly to his own unique Indian cultural context.
Let's look at a perfect example of this third meaning in action from his 1999 film, Khayal Gatha. Instead of spoon-feeding the audience to narrative, he relies on visual associations. First, we see a white cloth floating in the wind near a masjid, moving downward. Then he cuts immediately to an image of a woman in a white dress praying on the ground. By colliding these two specific visuals together, he sparks these profound, unspoken connections in our minds about spirituality, grounding, and history. And he does it without a single line of explanatory dialogue.
Shahani actually summed this up perfectly himself. He stated, "It is absurd to think that if you are depicting something, that is the content." For him, the true content isn't what's physically on the screen. The true content is forged in the psychological relationship between you, the viewer, and the cinematic object in front of you.
All right, let's move on to Section 3, splitting image and sound. In your typical everyday movies, audio is basically used as a safety net to confirm what you're seeing. You see a train, you hear a train chugging along, right? Shahani, however, deliberately separated the two. He completely divorced sound from the image to evoke deep, internal psychological states. This non-diegetic use of sound means the audio track lives its own distinct life. It carries heavy emotional weight, acting as a counterpoint to the visuals, rather than just mimicking them. Now, this wild approach to audio didn't just come out of nowhere. While on a French government scholarship, Shahani moved to Paris and assisted the legendary director Robert Bresson on his film Une Femme Douce. Working with Bresson was basically a masterclass.
It imparted this radical economy of means and a profound understanding of how off-screen, non-diegetic sound can completely shape and manipulate the viewer's emotional experience.
You can see this masterfully applied in his 1991 film Kazba, which is an adaptation of an Anton Chekhov story. Shahani fills the audio track with the natural, tranquil, off-screen sounds of the Kangra Valley. This incredible, serene peacefulness creates a really sharp, unsettling contrast with what we are actually watching. The on-screen murmurs, the tensions, and these bitter power struggles of a family fighting over an inheritance. It is just a brilliant way to use ambient audio to crank up the psychological tension in the room.
Next up is Section 4, Indian Arts as Cinematic Form.
So while Shahani fully embraced an austere European cinematic discipline, he totally localized it. He noted that while Bresson's work was incredibly stark, he wanted the magic of reality to really shine through in his own films. So, he injected the classical Indian concept of alankar, or ornamentation, directly into his formalist structures. This allowed him to maintain that rigorous European discipline while still giving his films an unmistakably lush Indian identity.
For instance, he didn't just use the Khyal classical music tradition as some pretty background noise, he used it as the actual structural blueprint for his filmmaking. He focused on the sequence and flow over discrete notes, he integrated heavy improvisation, and he held multiple temporal planes simultaneously. His films literally operate like visual music, weaving together mythology, history, and the personal, built with the exact same structural logic a classical musician uses to build a raga. He treated classical Indian arts as active, structural elements, not merely decorative backdrops for the camera. Take his documentary Bhavantarana, which focuses on the great Odissi dance maestro Kelucharan Mohapatra. Shahani uses the dance itself as a cinematic lens to explore the deep tension between strict codified technique and free improvisational movement. Through his camera, the human body literally becomes the ultimate landscape of expression. And that brings us to our final section, the epic legacy. All of these elements we've talked about, the European montage theories, the non-diegetic sound, the classical Indian ornamentation, they all combine to create his signature epic idiom. It's a style that demands active, rigorous engagement from us as viewers rather than just passive consumption. Shahani leaves behind an unmatched legacy of dialectical formalism, an incredibly respectful gaze toward his subjects, and a deep, epic historical consciousness. His films are irreducibly singular. They absolutely force us to think about structure and aesthetics in ways no other filmmaker has. So, I'm going to leave you with this provocative thought to ponder as you continue exploring the incredible world of cinema. The next time you sit down to watch a film, ask yourself, are you just passively consuming a linear plot, or are you actively reading a hidden language built into the very juxtaposition of the images and sounds? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer of Kumar Shahani's phenomenal work. Keep looking deeper, and I'll see you in the next one.